I think for me, uh, that was a pretty anticlimactic Game 7, wasn't it?
Well, I mean, the first half was fun.
First quarter was fun.
Yeah. Anytime you have the best player on the opposing team go down within the first 5 minutes of the game, you kind of know where you're going to be, for the rest of it. But I mean, they made it competitive for at least a half of basketball, which is not necessarily what I expected.
I feel like
And then,
we as fans kind of got robbed of the chance to have a pretty legendary Game 7 there.
A good question, I think for the NBA overall is there an Achilles tear problem, right now? Because it seems
Feels
like
like
it's
it.
not really. What?
It feels like it.
I mean, it's not really an injury that seemingly was as big of a thing. I mean, maybe it's just because it was so career-ending beforehand, and now you have players who can come back from it. They're not just retiring on the spot when they tear their Achilles. But how many 3 this playoffs? I think 6 on the season. It feels a little bit unprecedented, the amount of times that it's happening.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you guys don't follow Jeff on Sports, definitely go check him out. He makes great content. One of the points that he made was we are looking at the AAU era of players. And guys have just been playing, dozens of games every week for years, and it's now starting to take a toll on their body. I mean, you look at maybe not so much Damian Lillard, but definitely Tyrese Halliburton and certainly Jason Tatum to a certain extent.
Yep.
Grew up in that AAU circuit of playing 5 games a weekend. And now, possibly as a result of just the wear and tear on their body, it's almost expected that they'll have an injury from just purely from burnout.
And those are guys with
I mean, it kind of leads into a bigger topic that you and I have talked about. And it seems to be a topic among a lot of adults right now as to what's the proper way to raise your child in a sport.
Yeah. And it's a really good question.
It's a
and
phenomenal
I also
question.
think you're starting to see guys who have had no injury history, relatively with their lower body. Jason Tatum has kind of been an Iron Man for all of his 7 seasons in the NBA. He, despite the load management stuff, which is you can argue for it or against it, he's never really missed an extended period of time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest concern I would say overall for these injuries is it's not really even a ton of guys who are super fast twitch, and it's also not anything that they're doing isn't just a basketball move. If anybody who watched the Tyrese Halliburton injury on Sunday night watched it and went, oh my God, his Achilles just tore in half. And all he did was plant his foot back. You know what I mean? It wasn't he was,
It's kind of different in his scenario because he was playing with a calf strain. And that was a big conversation going into the game. Should he play? Should he not play? Yep. And if you're ever going to play through an injury, it should be NBA Finals Game 7. That is pretty much the only time that I would be you pretty much have to get out there and play.
Yeah.
With that being said, if you have a calf strain, it is incredibly dangerous as an athlete, but more so than any other sport, a professional basketball player. It is just so dangerous to go out there and try and be your best with an injury like that. So, I mean, that sucked. But beyond just that injury, another part of it that really sucked was just how much attention ESPN was giving it. And that kind of leads into one of my points that I'm going to make a little bit later in the show. But I think that they handled that whole situation really poorly. Lisa Salters was asking Miles Turner about it during the game, which was really just shitty.
Yeah.
Asking a player in a Game 7 about the superstar that just got hurt while he's trying to stay focused was just really shitty from a media standpoint. And then how many times yesterday during the game did they show that he was hurt on the bottom of the screen?
They referenced it after every commercial break.
So
there was they had the score, and then the score would flip and it would say Tyrese Halliburton not expected or not returning to this game. And I'm assuming that maybe for, somebody who's flicking the TV on, but it was definitely the main story of that second half was what the injury was, how they were going to respond to it, and whatnot.
Well, it's unfair from a Pacer perspective, and I think it's also unfair from a Thunder perspective because ESPN's setting this narrative before the game's even over that
yeah,
the Thunder didn't earn their win because Halliburton got hurt. And I mean, Halliburton getting hurt didn't make the Thunder earn it less. They still had to win this game. It was just less rewarding when they won, and that was kind of the part that to me felt shitty. But do you think that it was kind of a lame Game 7? I mean, we have these expectations of phenomenal Game 7s in the NBA Finals, and this one felt it wasn't even a blowout. It was just kind of a boring game of basketball.
It felt like there was a lot going for it in the first. Like I said, like I think that the injury kind of derailed it. Like, look, first and foremost, that first half, we kind of have been speaking about this the whole time for this series and being like, there's going to be a game in the 90s. It just can't happen at like a crucial point in the series, and this was obviously the most crucial point for Indiana, right? And then you lose Tyrese Halliburton in the first quarter, and you can't score. Like, they had 68 points at like the halfway mark of the third quarter. At that point, the game was over. You know what I mean? Like, and they've mounted some miraculous comebacks all year, but they hadn't come back from 18 down going into the fourth, you know, and like, there's a lot of questionable coaching decisions and stuff like that. And, you know, you can look at this and that and the other thing, like Aaron Nesmith played poorly all series, you know, Andrew Nembhard didn't have his best game tonight, whatever the thing is. But the fact of the matter is that TJ McConnell scored the only points on your team for 8 minutes in the second half. That's unbelievable.
It was kind of a lot of points, to be fair.
It was like 12. Yeah. Which, I mean, isn't...
But that leads into another question that I wanted to ask you. I mean,
okay,
McConnell comes in, literally was effectively ISOing the offense.
Yep.
Scored 6 straight buckets for the Pacers, but he also had 7 turnovers. So the Pacers were only, I mean, with 5 minutes left, it was a really serious game. The Pacers were down 9. They kind of clawed their way almost back into the game.
Yep.
And so you aren't there without TJ McConnell going on that stretch because no one else had it going. But will TJ McConnell be looked at in this game as a guy who left it all out there or as a guy who had 7 turnovers and really struggled?
I think it'll 100% be the guy who left it all out there just because of how his supporting cast played. You know, like Pascal Siakam was kind of a non-factor in this game.
But he also sat for a long time.
That's what I was going to say that, right? Like the third quarter, you sit Pascal Siakam for like 6 to 7 minutes. In an elimination game,
with
it doesn't really make a ton of sense.
Nembhard also sat during that time. He's your primary defender on Shea.
He had 3 fouls at that point, but at the same time, like you're expecting them to go out and try and win the game, right? Like TJ McConnell did some things really well on Sunday and some things really poorly on Sunday. And the things that he did really poorly on Sunday are mostly because of the fact that when you double him, he can't see over the trap and was just kind of throwing the ball everywhere. But to be honest with you, like Cason Wallace, first and foremost, I want to sing his praises because he is a starting caliber guard on most NBA teams, in my opinion. He is a better version of what Davion Mitchell gives you for the Heat.
Yeah.
That's my take on that.
I mean, I think it's true.
Yeah. But that being said, like TJ McConnell's now your primary ball handler, a role that he has not played all year. And to be honest with you, he's not a facilitating guard.
No.
Indiana missed Tyrese Halliburton being able to move the ball like no one else. And you could tell in the second half. You could tell.
I was just going to say, I thought you were being a little unfair towards McConnell. I mean, they stuck him in a role that he has never played. And
correct.
Like, ever in his career. And that's why
they had no one to fill that role once Tyrese was gone. Because like they literally did not have if TJ McConnell somehow got hurt in the second half, they had no primary ball handler.
Well, but that was what was so shitty about taking Nembhard off the floor. Because it was TJ bringing up the ball by himself the second that and give Oklahoma City credit. I mean, I didn't think Mark Daigneault would outcoach Rick Carlisle. He did last night, and that's what won them this game, in my opinion.
Yep, I agree. They just blitzed.
They just blitzed. The second McConnell stepped over half court, they were doubling him, and he literally, as you said, could not see over the screen.
And I mean, he picked up his dribble a few times, like right over half court, which everybody kind of knows is a death sentence. But that being said, like he was throwing to Miles Turner, who also had a really bad series. He was throwing to Miles Turner.
He did have COVID, though, to be fair.
Yeah, and Tony Bradley, Obi Toppin, and they were just coughing it up. Like they were trying to do too much with the ball.
But that brings you back to the conversation, right? Like, what is Rick Carlisle doing?
Yeah.
Again, no one's more supportive of him than we are on this show. But you can't give Tony Bradley and Thomas Bryant minutes, like that many minutes in an elimination
An
of Game
elimination
7
game.
with
Yeah.
Pascal Siakam on the bench. You can't do
Yeah.
that. It makes
It
no
felt odd.
sense.
It felt odd.
Ben
And
Shepherd played
Pascal
way too
Siakam,
many minutes. There was that
I
one
agree.
shot that we were talking about in the fourth that was, or in the end of the third quarter, that was a huge shot. And you
Yep.
said that the second it left his hands, everyone knew it wasn't it.
Yeah. The second he caught it,
Yeah.
like the way that you lined up. And look, if you wanted to bring those guys off the bench, obviously first, like the most important point to this is no one was expecting Tyrese Halliburton to not play, right? But if you wanted to rely, you had to rely on Ben Shepherd or some of these guys, and you were going to shrink your rotation in a Game 7, you should have given them more minutes in games 1 through 6. You know what I mean? Because he clearly was uncomfortable out there.
Yeah.
Tony Bradley played a lot this series. I wasn't really expecting that the way that Thomas Bryant played the series before.
Agreed.
But that's another guy that you brought off the bench, and he was just kind of cold, you know, and he had some open looks.
A lot of turnovers and a lot of fouls from him.
Yeah. And then, yeah, obviously, like, look, OKC is one of the best foul drawing teams in the NBA right now. That's kind of what they do. They get downhill. J-Dub, everything that he does is at the rim. Shea, obviously, is one of the best at drawing fouls, drawing contact, making N1s, doing those types of things. But there's no argument that like the foul margin is the reason you lost. The reason you lost is because 1/4 of your possessions, I think more than that, probably a third of your possessions, you turn the ball over. Versus OKC, who had no turnovers in the third quarter, none.
Alex,
I don't even know if they turned it over in the second half.
What was the point differential going into the fourth quarter?
16, I think.
Oklahoma City Thunder in the third quarter had 18 points off turnovers.
Yeah,
that was the game.
Yeah. So, like, I mean, and I think that you look at this series overall and say, it was good for the NBA to have these two small market teams battling it out. And the series gave us a lot of really good things. But it does kind of leave you thinking, like, I kind of wanted to see more, right? Like, I kind of wish that everybody was healthy. I kind of wish that, the other thing. Like, I think it's a different game if you have Tyrese Halliburton in it.
Especially the way he started.
Correct. But you also can't make that argument. You know what I mean? Like, health is the biggest, we say it all the time. Like, the best ability is availability, right? And if you're not healthy, I don't really attribute an asterisk to this.
Agreed.
Right? I think that as a fan, you can say that you wish that Tyrese Halliburton played, right? But who knows if they go on a tear and win this game, or if they lose it, right? Like, I mean, it doesn't matter.
Even if you get blown out by 30 once he goes down, you could say, "Oh, this team got defeated when he lost." This team was an 8-point game with 4 minutes left.
Right.
They still had a chance to win.
Right.
They just couldn't do it. But prayers up to Tyrese Halliburton. That's a guy that nobody. I mean, he was setting the league on fire, kind of carving out a definition of who he was as a player in this playoff run. It felt like, and setting this Pacers team up for success. But now, if you have to wait a year for him, it leaves a lot of question marks in that front office with what you do. A lot of guys looking to get paid, and in an Eastern Conference that's wide open, it feels like now's not really your time to strike, especially without him. So a lot of questions about that moving forward.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, actually, because now we have 2 Achilles injuries in the NBA in the Eastern Conference that are major ones, right? You have Jason Tatum on the Celtics,
3.
Jaylen Brown, who's been undergoing knee surgery. Who's the third? Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about Achilles injuries.
I meant Dame. Yeah,
Damian
good
Lillard
point.
Was the third.
Sorry. Yes, and I think Milwaukee will be out of the playoff picture once they move on from Giannis if they end up doing that. But this Pacers team is one that got really hot at the right time and obviously is trying to continue that into next season. But now, like you said, they've lost a season, right? You don't have Tyrese Halliburton next year. So what is the ceiling for this team? And what does the Eastern Conference look like next year with 2 of the best players in it not being able to play?
I mean, I think now you let Miles Turner walk.
Okay.
He'll go earn a contract somewhere.
Okay.
Landing spots for him, he would be a great fit with Los Angeles. The Lakers.
Yes.
Right? Like a team that's dying for a big man.
Yeah, good defensive center, can stretch the floor, make some big plays. And yeah, I agree with that.
In terms of the Eastern Conference landscape, or let me start with the Pacers. The Pacers have a lot of the premier role players in the NBA.
Yep.
It's kind of what they're built on. And guys like Um, I don't really foresee a lot of these guys leaving, but there is a super high premium for Andrew Nemhard, Aaron Neesmith, Obi Toppin, and TJ McConnell right now. And those are all tried and true role players.
Yeah.
So the value that you can get for those guys is much higher than you would think.
Okay.
And so this Pacers team could either blow it up or they could try and linger around. But to me, it feels like you need a retool, and you have the time to do that.
Okay.
You're just hoping that Halliburton, who relies on his explosiveness, I mean, that's kind of what his game is built on. And you hope he doesn't lose that with this injury. But
Agreed.
It doesn't. This felt like Indiana's chance to win, and unfortunately, after that injury, it feels like they may not have one for a long time.
I agree. And so now here's another question that I have for you about this finals.
Let me address your second question first.
Okay, go for it.
The Eastern Conference as a landscape right now, to me, it feels like a two-horse race next year, and that's between the Cavs and the Knicks. And those are the two healthy teams. And obviously, we have a whole offseason to kind of sit back and watch and see players move. And at this time last year, there was still a ton of moves that hadn't happened, and players were on different teams, so we didn't really know. So it may be too easy to say, or too early to say. But to me, next year feels like either the Cavs or the Knicks making it to the finals and then losing, but being able to be like, okay, we went this year while everyone else was bad or injured.
Alrighty. I don't hate that take. The only other question that I have for you about this finals is on the OKC side of the ball. Now, if you're Sam Presti, you have executed a perfect rebuild. I think we've been singing their praises for years now for doing that. Paul George trade worked out. You have a ton of picks going forward. Your team is the best in the NBA right now. And if you can keep a lot of these guys on roster, a lot of them aren't getting paid all that much. You know what I mean? They're still on their rookie contracts, vet minimums, like this type of stuff. So here's my question. We talked about the Boston Celtics probably having a 2-year championship window when it was Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Kristaps, Drew Holiday, and Derek White because of the salary cap. This is not an issue that the Thunder are going to see for a few more years. And with all the draft capital that they have from the moves that they've made, what is this championship window looking like for OKC, and what will they have to do to repeat as champions?
I think that to me, this roster doesn't feel like one that's going to crack off 2 or 3 in a row.
Okay.
It doesn't feel that way for me. And I think that that's a combination of this buildup of guys showing that they can be beaten. I mean, they didn't feel all that dominant throughout this playoff run.
Yep.
There were definitely games where they had their weaknesses exposed.
Right.
And that will change with more experience, obviously, but it just, to me, doesn't feel like a team that's going to rattle off a couple wins, especially in the West Coast being just as difficult as it is to play right now. Getting even harder with the move of Kevin Durant to the Rockets, which we'll talk about shortly.
Right.
But what is this team's window? I think it's anywhere from 6 to 7 years. I think they're here to hang around because these guys not only are incredibly young, but are also like you can tell that they are just a core group of guys that want to stick together and play together for as long as they'll be able to stay in Oklahoma.
Right.
And I mean, if Shea wanted to, he could stay long enough to have a statue, in my opinion. I mean, he could stay for as long as he wants.
Okay. Yeah, I don't disagree. I think that this is a team that has been built and bred to be in the playoff picture, in the championship contention picture for 5 to 6 years.
Yeah. So
I just think that
the second half of your question, what do I think they have to do to repeat as champions? I think that they have to be able to weather the storm in the West. And as we saw last year when the Dallas Mavericks made it, you may be the best team all season, but I mean, in the playoffs, anything can happen in that conference. And we know that to be true.
Right.
So for them to repeat as champions, I just think that they have to weather the storm and get through the conference finals, which in at least next year's case, to me, feels like it will probably be harder than the finals will.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, for me, I think that the biggest thing that OKC needs to do is stay healthy. I think that they have the most talented roster in the NBA. If they can retain all of their guard play, which is kind of the thing that made them so dangerous this year, was their trapping, their press, their guards, the guard defense, the way that they rattled teams' primary ball handlers and got out in transition and ran. I mean, Jalen Williams had like 40 points the other night, and like maybe 25% of his shots were contested. You know what I mean? Like, that's just the way that they can play some days. So I think that that's like the biggest thing for them is just, one, maintain everybody on your roster, and two, make sure that they stay healthy. Chet Holmgren's had some injury concerns in the past. I've become more of a fan of the Isaiah Hartenstein move, regardless of the fact that I think you paid him too much.
If you ignore the number, it's a great move.
Correct, because he gives them a secondary big that they need and a nice lob threat.
And he also expires when they have to pay these next guys.
Correct. So all in all, I think that they are in a really good spot to be super competitive for the next few years. And then you're just looking at their draft picks like, what are they going to do with those, and what else can they add to this roster?
Well, and I don't even know if it's a question of what can they do now.
Right.
I think it's a question of how can they extend it 7 or 8 years from now.
Yep.
Right? Because they don't need anything else now. They've proven that.
I mean, but this has been like we're coming to the close, I think. I mean, maybe even last season was the close of it, of like the era of the dynasty. I think the last one you could point to would be the Golden State Warriors winning in 2022, after not winning for like 3 or 4 years, right? But I think, what is this, the 6th or the 7th season that an NBA champion has not repeated
since since when the Raptors won.
Yeah, so 6 seasons. So I think that, like, if you look at that and you say, last year I think the Celtics came into this as the favorite to win it all. And maybe even the year before that, you had the Nuggets, the same thing. But I think that OKC comes into the next year as the favorite. And I think it's warranted. The same way that I thought it was warranted for the Celtics.
I mean, I agree that they're the favorite, but after the finals last year, everyone looked at that Celtics team and was like, next year's a wash. They're going to win it again.
Right.
Because we won in 5 and it was incredibly dominant, right?
Right.
This Thunder team barely won. I'm going to say barely for lack of a better word. Struggled to win in 7 games against the 6th seed Indiana Pacers.
Yep.
And that, obviously, you never would read that in the history book. But I'm not going into next season being like, the Thunder are going to win it again. I think they're the team to beat. I think that they will have a target on their head. And I also think that they're going to have to battle the championship hangover.
Okay.
So I guess we'll see.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily think that they're going to win them in a row, but I could see this Oklahoma City team winning 3 of the next 4 or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, just that's just kind of the way that this team feels like it's built right now. And, I mean, kudos to their front office for doing just the best job in basketball, potentially of all time.
I think them staying healthy is a huge key to that. I mean, Chet Holmgren's a guy who already has a bad injury record. He's only been in the league for 3 years. He needs to stay healthy.
Yep.
The way that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander plays is very explosive, very downhill. You hope that he stays healthy, right? You hope that Jalen Williams stays healthy. So barring injuries, I think that could definitely be on the table. But there are a lot of questions that we have to answer in between now and then.
Okay.
Let's move on now. Kevin Durant got traded to the Rockets for Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, the 10th overall pick, and 5 second-round picks. I've got some thoughts on this trade. Alex, do you think that they overpaid, underpaid, or was just right for the value?
Oh, I think they underpaid, in my opinion. I think that if you're the Phoenix Suns, you did not get enough of the right pieces. Jalen Green is somebody that I look at and I say, if this guy is on your roster come the NBA season, you have failed as a front office. You have to flip him for something. Now, what I've heard the Rumorville say is that they want to take that 10th overall pick and Jalen Green and package that to move up in the draft, which I don't necessarily hate, because I think that you're going to be in a pretty good spot if you're in the top 5, right? Maybe you get Ace Bailey at that point. Maybe you get somebody who's going to be an impact player on your roster. But you just traded for a guy who plays the same position as Bradley Beal and Devin Booker and does it worse than both of them.
Well, they've already said they're going to flip him.
Okay, and as they should, right? But I also don't think that Jalen Green's trade value is that high because I don't think he's that good of a player. Now, you got Dylan Brooks, who I obviously really like, and a few second round picks that you can maybe flip into something for a player down the line.
I think the picks for them, it's just someone to take a chance on. I mean, second round picks are just throwing darts at the dartboard, right? Seeing if you can hit the center.
Some older players, some more experienced guys,
right?
Whatever.
So, I mean, they have 5 chances at one of those. That's what it screams to me.
But look, I think that if you were going to trade with the Houston Rockets, you had to be looking at Amen Thompson, who I think was untouchable, Reed Shepherd, Tari Eason, Jabari Smith, somebody off the bench that like you could develop into a good player. Reed Shepherd was the 3rd overall pick last year. He didn't sniff the court, and you couldn't get a conversation to get him in Phoenix, right, for Kevin Durant. And it just feels like the value that you got back wasn't something that is going to translate super well, especially if you don't draft the right person coming up. So for me, I think that Houston actually did really well to win this trade. Does Kevin Durant turn you into a championship contender? I think so.
Yes,
but I don't know. But I mean, he's had a really poor track record the past few years, ever since leaving Brooklyn.
I don't know if that's necessarily his fault, though.
But I don't disagree. But I also think that getting out of this trade, if you're Houston, without having to like even look at Şengün or Amen Thompson or Tari Eason or Fred VanVleet or any of these guys, like that's a pretty good move for you.
I think Kevin Durant in his last few seasons has left behind a trail of destructive breadcrumbs behind him everywhere he's gone, right? He ruined the Nets for the next few years, ruined the Suns for the foreseeable future. And I think that, again, if you're Houston, you're right. You underpaid. You kept every single prospect that you put a star next to saying, we want to keep them.
Right.
They're flipping Jalen Green. They're flipping the 10th pick. You effectively got Kevin Durant for Dillon Brooks and 5 first-round picks, which means that you gave yourself, or I'm sorry, second-round picks. You gave yourself 14 more points per game for 5 second-round picks, and that's all that you did.
Right.
That, to me, turns you into a contender, especially as the second overall seed in the playoffs this year. I think that they won this trade so much, and I don't think that it says a lot about Houston. I think it says a lot about the offers that Phoenix was getting for Kevin Durant, because they had offers from probably a lot more teams than you would think in the NBA. And he had his desired locations, right? He had those 3. But you could have chosen from all of them, and this is the best one that you got, which means what was in the other packages, because it could not have been good. If you had to settle for Dillon Brooks and 2 things that you're going to package into someone else and 5 second-round picks as your best offer for a top 10 player of all time, top 15 player of all time, then, I mean, his value was so incredibly low. And for Houston, I think that you're laughing all the way to the bank with this deal, and it brings Kevin Durant back to a place where he can be a legitimate playoff favorite going into the season.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see how he adapts to Ime Udoka's offense, and more so his defense. I think that's more so the question with this move and KD in particular. But I think that this puts you in a really good spot. I think that you're expecting Amen Thompson to take another jump next year.
That's
not
kind
necessarily
of
offensively, but to an All-NBA team caliber guy.
I would say offensively.
An All-NBA defensive team caliber guy.
I would
maybe
say
offensively.
You expect him to get up between the 16 and 20 point per game mark. And you said you're interested to see how Kevin Durant adjusts to these teams. I'm interested to see how this team adjusts to Kevin Durant. Last year, they were built on running through Jalen Green and Alperen Şengün. And that's just not how Kevin Durant plays. So how is the relationship between him and Şengün? How are they going to get Amen Thompson the ball, right? How are they are they going to run their offense through VanVleet? Do they need to flip some of that young talent into a point guard, right? These are all kind of questions that I have that haven't been answered yet.
And I think that you're hoping that Reed Shepherd becomes either a lead guard or a really, really good shooter in the league, right? A spot-up guy. I don't necessarily think that he has a super high ceiling, in my opinion, but I've been proven wrong with him before, because I really didn't think going into Kentucky he was going to be a top 5 pick. That being said, I think you move Jalen Green if you're Phoenix, because you have to. And I don't think his value is super high, like I said, because he's another inefficient scorer that doesn't really give you a ton on the defensive side of the ball. But I think that KD can play right alongside Alperen Şengün and be just fine. I think if Amen Thompson is averaging an efficient 12 to 14 points a game, you're super happy with that because of what he brings on the defensive end. And at the same time, this Rockets team is still one of the younger teams in the league. You know what I mean? Even with KD on the roster, right? So I think you're still looking to develop some of these players into guys who are here when KD is gone. And you're just going to trust in Ime Udoka, who has proven to be one of the best head coaches in the NBA.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. Let's move on into the NBA draft talk.
Okay.
The first round of the draft is this Wednesday. The Dallas Mavericks have the first overall pick. Feels pretty unanimous that will be Cooper Flag.
Yeah.
I think that this is one of the drafts that we've had for the first time in a while where behind the number one pick, the next 6 or 7 picks are really just a giant question mark.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think this looks like?
Yeah, I mean, I think the 1 and 2 are pretty decided at this point. I think it's going to be Cooper Flag and Dylan Harper, 1 and 2. 3 is where it gets interesting because it really depends on who you talk to and what they know. Ace Bailey is obviously the most talented player at this pick, right? And I think I've heard a ton about that from the way that he plays, like his ceiling being around a Paul George type guy, if you can develop him. But his IQ is not super high, and his shot selection is bad, and he needs to be developed. He's a raw prospect, and he has not helped himself in the draft at all, in the pre-draft like interview process and all this type of stuff. He's refused interviews, refused workouts, and it feels like he's starting to slip on draft boards, despite the fact that coming into the season he was a top 2. Oh, will he go or will Cooper go number 1? Right. So I think that there is a real reality where he falls out of the top 5.
I would say that the only argument that you could make to him staying, if you look after 2, and we've talked about Dylan Harper's fit with the Spurs, go check out our last episode.
Yeah.
After 2, you have Philadelphia at 3.
Yep.
And right now it feels like everyone's saying VJ Edgecombe is going to Philadelphia, but that's not a situational play for them. They have a set backcourt with Maxey and Jared McCain, right?
Right.
So, I mean, if Ace Bailey's going to go, it's probably at 3 to the 76ers. If he doesn't go to them, right, it's probably 6 with the Wizards. So I think that's really the big question mark.
Okay. I mean, yeah, and you're right. Like that would be the ideal fit, but at the same time, Ace Bailey has refused to work out for Philadelphia or meet with Philadelphia. So I don't really necessarily know where he's trying to go. You know what I mean? Like normally when people start doing this type of stuff, they have some sort of plan that isn't just I'm going to free fall in the draft, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm going to go to a more desirable location. I'm going to go work out here. I'm going to go here or there, wherever.
Or I'm going to go to a place that I can walk on and be the guy from day one.
Correct. And it feels like you could do that in Washington,
mm-hmm,
but he also hasn't worked out for them. You know what I mean? So it's like, where are we trying to get to? Is it Brooklyn at 8? Because that's a really big fall for a guy like you.
That would be kind of historic.
Yeah.
I think to me, the top 5 right now, I see Ace Bailey as a Wizard.
Okay.
I hope that he's a Wizard. But if he's going to go top 5, I think it will be with the 76ers.
Yep.
I have, in no specific order, Flag, Harper, Edgecombe, Jeremiah Fears. I mean, but 4 and 5 is just a conversation of who's it going to be situationally, right? Because you could throw Trey Johnson in there. You could throw either of the Duke guys, right? Con Knipple, or if someone comes really high from Malawatch, right?
Trey Johnson should be in there.
I already said, yeah, I said Trey Johnson is in there.
Okay, cool.
I mean, those feel like the guys to me.
Gotcha.
Who could go in the top 5.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if somebody goes up and gets Queen.
Yeah, I mean, Queen is also a phenomenal player on this list who reminds me a lot of an Alperen Sengun.
There's a lot of questions with that, right? Carter Bryant's an interesting prospect out of Arizona. Like
the guy from South Carolina.
Yeah, I don't love him because he's not a stretch player and he's like 6'8". But at the same time, like there are a lot of guys who could go in the top 10, and I think that if you're in the top 10, you're pretty happy with who you get.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like the development thing. Like Kama Malawatch is going to be the 9 to 11th overall pick, right? Most likely. And if you develop him correctly as a guy who hasn't like started playing basketball at 16 years old, you're going to be super happy with the production that he brings you.
Absolutely.
Because he's going to be a lob threat and he's going to be a rim protector for the next 10 years if he can stay healthy.
Which is why like a place like Brooklyn feels perfect for him where he can just go suck for a couple of years.
Right.
So I think you're right. And I also think that this is, I mean, last year's draft sucked.
Yeah.
This year's draft is purely situational, and every pick that will be made after the first one will be a question of, what are they going to do with that?
Right.
Will the Spurs keep the second overall pick? I think that they could possibly trade out of that for some value, right? To make their team better and legitimately go on a run, right?
Yep.
So I just think that there's so many questions that will be answered on draft night, but none of them will be answered right now. So I'm super excited.
Yeah, me too. And we'll come in with a draft grade for each of those guys after that happens.
For sure.
And I'm super excited to be watching that as well.
That's one of our favorite episodes every year.
It's literally one of my favorite times of year is to watch these guys go up and, talk about some of the falls, some of the biggest stories and whatnot that we're going to be seeing in the next NBA season.
Dude, the dogs are going crazy, huh?
That's classic. Over about nothing, by the way. There's no one up there.
Give me one person that you think is a huge value pick that could be a steal in this draft.
Big value pick. It's a good question. I want to say Walter Clayton, but I feel like it's a bit too chalk.
I was going to say Walter Clayton too.
Okay. But I also think that he's kind of flown up draft boards a little bit. You know what I mean? I think Nick Clifford is one that you're going to look at, who's like a 23 or 24-year-old guy from Colorado State, but does a lot of things really well. And as a 6'8" lanky forward, is someone that you'd like. I also like Maxime Renaud, the guy from Stanford, the 7-foot center. Seems like he could, become a solid prospect. But again, I'm a big fan of the older guys just as it is for value picks, despite the fact that their ceiling might not be necessarily as high.
To talk MLB, let's just do it real quick.
Okay.
Aroldis Chapman struck Rafi out. He went 0 for 5 in his first game against the Red Sox.
Yep.
And then hit a home run off us the next day. That's pretty much all we got to say about MLB. We've got a new segment coming up for you guys that I'm pretty excited to do. Right now, we're just calling it ins and outs. We did this around Christmas time for the new year, but I'm thinking we start to do this every episode. And I'm super excited. This won't necessarily, with summer coming up, sports are going to be pretty dry. We're not going to have a ton to talk about. This could definitely, bridge the gap of entertainment. Yeah, shake things up a little bit. So pretty much we're just going to come up with one thing or a couple of things that we're in on this week and a couple of things that we're out on this week, meaning like we're all over it. We're maybe obsessed with it right now. And out is, don't care about it. Ready for it to not be here anymore.
All right. I'd love for you to run me through it. Give me your first one.
All right. This week I'm in on MLB The Show. I talked about it last week, and I'm still talking about it this week because I'm pretty much obsessed. And I forgot. I played it a ton in 21 and 22, but this year haven't really been playing it that much. I am obsessed with it right now. And if you can play, definitely play because it'll get you into baseball too.
Alrighty. Something that I've been super in on this week is throwing some sports equipment into the back of the trunk. I got two mitts and a baseball in there back there. And if you really want to shake up a social gathering or something like that, break those out. You know what I mean? It completely changes the vibe. Having a little toss anywhere that you go is something on the move that you probably want to do. And I'm into that. Maybe I'll throw on the football next weekend. But, I'm super excited to be continuing to do that. And, just getting a little catch on the side of the road.
Yeah, no, for sure. I used to do that in high school. I would just have miscellaneous sports equipment in my car so that if we were sitting there hanging out, I'd be like, hey, let's toss the pigskin around. But I'm going to piggyback off that and say having a catch. Going out, grabbing the mid, grabbing a ball, having a catch. Me and Gavin went out. Me and Gavin went out today in the field and just threw the ball around for a couple minutes. And it was something I haven't done in a couple of years, but certainly picking up the glove, flashing some leather, throwing the ball around, dude.
Yeah.
Might make your day a little bit better.
Another thing that I'm in on, because you just piggybacked and said something else, is I've been into mowing the lawn these past few days. Throw on some tunes, get the UV on, lather on some sunscreen, go outside, mow the lawn. It's kind of a peaceful thing. I understand that I'm becoming my dad when I say that I like doing that, and there's not really much that you can respond to. But I'm in on it. I'm in on lawn care this week, so I'm going to keep doing that.
Always been a big lawn mowing guy. Grew up in a huge field from the ages of 11 to 18. Every other weekend I was out on that mower mowing the back lawn.
Yes, sir.
So if anyone knows about lawn care, it's this guy. Something I'm out on. I got a couple things I'm out on this week. My first one, pretty serious note. I'm out on ESPN doing the NBA coverage. I think that the league
Okay.
would be a better place if another network came in and took over responsibility. And I'm really excited to see what NBC does with that. But to
Hmm.
be honest, ESPN doesn't cover the game, they cover the narratives around it, and I'm getting really sick of that. It feels like a lot of people are tuning in to watch, and as a side effect of that, they're getting all the bullshit that comes with it and the fake
Hmm.
takes and the clickbaiting and the
Stephen A.
rage baiting in a lot of ways. And the people that they have talking about it aren't necessarily experts or giving their opinion as kind of balanced as most people should. So for me, I'm out on ESPN having the coverage rights to all of the NBA Finals games, all of the NBA. I was really disappointed with the way that they covered that injury last night. They showed it 50,000 times. They
Hmm.
kept showing the banner at the bottom. As we mentioned, the Lisa Salters interview earlier, I was really disappointed with the way that they handled that, and it kind of felt like the cherry on top for something that's been brewing for a long time.
Yeah. I also think that just overall the coverage of the NBA Finals this year wasn't great. Like, I just don't think that the announcers did a fantastic job. I like Richard Jefferson as a player, and I actually like him a lot when he's on early morning television.
For
I
sure.
don't necessarily hate Doris Burke all that much, but I just don't think that this crew had the sauce. You know what I mean? Especially when you look at a TNT crew with Reggie Miller on it, watching, the Pacers play the Knicks in the Eastern Conference Finals.
100%.
And you're like, that's an awesome crew with Kevin Harlan and all those guys. And Mike Breen's obviously
100%.
a legend, but I feel like we could be doing a little bit better with our announcing core.
I agree with what you said, and you can love Richard Jefferson as a guy. Like, when I hear him go on shows and give his opinion, and even as you said, as an analyst, I think he does a really good job. But
Yeah.
just kind of, I used to listen to JJ Redick's show the day that it came out twice a week. I
Right.
didn't think that he was a good announcer, and you can separate those two things 100%. But to me, I would like it if RJ was in the booth replacing one of those guys in the pre and post game show. I think they do
Mm-hmm.
a horrible job.
Yep.
So, I mean, if you stack the NBA on ESPN up against the NBA on TNT, they win in every single aspect except for Mike Breen. It's
Right.
the only thing that ESPN has over them.
Right.
So, the pre and post game shows, the announcing crews, as you mentioned, and really just the way that the ESPN media treats the players and the owners and all the people involved as kind of just an item. It's grinding my gears, and I'm out on it this week. I'm probably going to be
Okay.
out on it next week too. And then when the
It's
NBA
fair.
season rolls around, I'm going to forget that I was mad about that and not care anymore. But for now, I'm out on it.
All right, here's something that I'm out on. I started my first week back doing basketball camps here in Massachusetts, and the amount of TikTok kids that are out there these days is kind of unbelievable. Look, I'm not going to be the old guy and say put your phone down and read a book or something. I really don't care all that much. But if you come up to me and you say the words 6'7",
I told you.
I'm
I told
probably
you it
going to
was going
punch
to
you
be
in the
bad.
face. It is unreal. You cannot go anywhere without hearing it, and I'm starting to lose it. So I'm out on that this week. Do not bring that back.
I don't
can die
get
a
it.
horrible
I
death.
think this might be the first time in years that there was a meme that you and I didn't get at all.
Yeah, I don't get it.
I guess we're old heads now. We
Yeah,
don't
we
get
are
it at
so
all.
old.
But I texted you a week ago and said, "Hey, you're gonna hate your job by the second day because you're gonna hear about all the 6'7" jokes," and it was something
Yeah.
you hadn't thought of, and on
Yeah.
the first day, you're already complaining about it.
I'm honestly glad you gave me the heads up, because if I walked in there and that happened, I would have been taken aback by it, one, and two, equally as pissed off about it. Just the shock value of it may have caused an internal spark, but that is something I'm out on this week.
Something I'm out on this week, and this is my last one.
Okay.
The Oklahoma City Thunder champagne celebration in their locker room was really bad. I mean,
Yep.
it was clearly their first time winning
Correct.
anything. If you win the NBA Finals, you should be Gronk spiking champagne bottles off the locker room, especially if it's your locker room.
Yeah.
When the cameras are in there, you should not be able to see a single person because it's nothing but foam. And the Thunders, it was literally just like Chet Holmgren having a solo rave with 7 Michelob Ultras in his hands. And then Lou Dort couldn't figure out how to get the top off the bottle, so no one was...
I always think that that's kind of cool, though, is not being able to pop the bottle and then somebody who's actually won the championship coming over and being able to do it or something like that. But their championship celebration was pretty.
It was bad. It was lame.
Bad.
Also, this is going to be a super lame parade.
Yes,
for sure.
Yes.
So that
I don't have another one. Yeah, I don't have another one.
No, me neither.
But I'm certainly out on that as well.
But I was disappointed in that for sure. We'll be back early next week to talk about NBA draft stuff. But until then, this is the close of the NBA season. We're both pretty bummed about it.
Yeah.
But we've still got a lot of content coming up with you, coming up for you down the stretch here. But until then, this has been the Corner Office, and I'm Jack Byrne.
I'm Alex Penders.
On 3.